Let's talk about Juneteenth very quickly. Let's talk about Juneteenth. But first, I want to give you guys the difference in flags that you may see during Juneteenth. This red, black, and green flag. And different people within the Black empowerment movement, they have their own take, but I just want to kind of give you a compare and contrast because we're talking about two flags. We're talking about this flag that you see as well as this flag. Very quickly, these two flags, one history, but which one tells the truth? Which one tells the truth? We're unpacking the powerful symbolism of Juneteenth through the lens of two flags, the widely promoted red, white, and blue Juneteenth flag versus the so-called revolutionary Pan-African red, black, and green flag. Now, for those foundational Black Americans, we don't associate ourselves anymore with the red, black, and green Pan-African flag because what you'll see is a total celebration of Black Americans wearing tribal cloth from Africa. But we've been here before 1526 in this country. So the only thing that we know of is that, one, isn't everybody from Africa? Don't a lot of African people come from different countries? They have different cultures. They have different this. Why are Black Americans always tied to be African American? But Europeans that came over here from Europe in the early 14, 15, 1600s, you never hear the descendants call themselves European Americans. But for some reason, we've been here as long and longer than them, but somehow we're still African American. We're not just American or Black American. This is the dichotomy and duplicity of trying to tie someone to a continent they know nothing about. And even though we all stated through fossils and all other sorts of archaeology information and evidence that everyone derives from Africa. Let's get back on the flag. I don't want to go too far, too fast. Because this flag right here has been plastered across all sorts of, government offices. The Pan-African flag, also known as the RGB flag, created by the Universal Negro Improvement Association under the leadership of no other than Marcus Garvey in 1920. And this flag wasn't made for assimilation. It was made for reclamation, supposedly. And that the red symbolizes the blood that unites all people of African ancestry, and that the blood shed in the struggle for the liberation or our liberation. And black represents the color of the people, bold, proud, and unbroken. And that the green symbolizes the abundant natural wealth of Africa, we to be stolen, exploited, but never forgotten. And this flag wasn't made to say we are American now. It was made to declare we are African people, survivors of the Mafa and the transatlantic Holocaust, and we are rising. So again, that's the flag that you see on your screen. Next, we have the Juneteenth flag. Now, this flag has been, again, plastered across government offices, schools, and even Walmart shelves. It's the Juneteenth flag that's blue on the top, red on the bottom, with a white star exploding in the middle. Now, don't get me wrong, it has meaning. Let's break it down. So the star represents Texas, where Juneteenth originated, and also symbolizes freedom for all enslaved people. The burst, the outline around the star, you guys see that? It is meant to symbolize a nova or a new beginning, freedom breaking through. Now, the arc that you see, the curvature across the flag, it represents a new horizon, hope for the future. And the colors, red, white, and blue, these colors were chosen to mirror the American flag to show that formerly enslaved people were now Americans too. So here's the heart of it. The red, white, and blue Juneteenth flag tries to fold us into America's story, which we're the bedrock and foundation of. It's a quiet declaration of belonging, a symbolic seat at the table. But the red, black, and green flag, while interesting enough, says that we are not just survivors, we are warriors, innovators, kings and queens. Our freedom doesn't come from Lincoln's pen, it comes from our fight, our resistance, and our bloodline. That's why so many in the Black liberation movement reject the red, white, and blue, while others accept it. And when it comes to Juneteenth, because while the Emancipation Proclamation was signed in 1863, we didn't get the news in Texas until 1865, 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed that freed all enslaved people. And we still don't have justice in 2025. So we celebrate Juneteenth to honor our ancestors, but mostly the red, white, and blue, because we are foundational Black Americans. Now, with that being said, I think we should really break down Juneteenth. And as you guys see all these images, you see a lot of these, African cloth and traditional garments that does not represent our Americanness. Somehow we got lost along the way. But let me, guys, just inform you and educate for people who may not be familiar with Juneteenth. The day freedom finally came, not liberation. Liberation is something totally different. And why we must never forget Juneteenth, and why we must recognize and or celebrate it. So, what is Juneteenth? Why does it carry so much weight? And why must every Black man, woman, and child understand and celebrate this day with righteous pride? The caveat is also for non-Black Americans to celebrate this as well. Because it was June 19th, 1865, the place, Galveston, Texas, the westernmost Confederate state where enslaved people from the continent of Africa and those indigenous Black Americans that were already here still toiled under the brutal hand of bondage more than 2 years after President Lincoln had signed the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863. Yes, you guys heard me right. The Emancipation Proclamation, which declared that all enslaved people in Confederate states were to be free, and been in effect for over 2 years, was still in shackles and chains. But word didn't travel fast in those days, especially when slaveholders had every incentive to keep it hidden. So for hundreds of thousands of Black men and Black women and children in Texas, still enslaved, and still slavery was ruining and ruling their lives. Until that fateful day, because on June 19th, Union General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston with 2,000 troops, issued a General Order number 3 declaring, the people of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. And just like that, folks, the last vestiges of legal slavery was shattered. Juneteenth is more than a date. It's a spiritual rapture, a movement when stolen humanity was returned, even if it's imperfectly. It's not the 4th of July. If you guys ever read the 4th of July when it came to Frederick Douglass said, what is the 4th of July to a slave? That's because while we were gaining our independence from the British July 4th, 1776, Black Americans were still enslaved. We were still in shackles. We were still chained. That is why. That was Americans' independence, but not Black Americans' independence. Because Juneteenth is our Independence Day, the day when freedom finally made its way to the deepest corners of the South. But don't get it twisted, guys. Freedom didn't mean equality. It didn't bring land and reparations and protection. Whether it be from those police officers who deal in white supremacy and police brutality against Black Americans. What followed were decades of Jim Crow, lynching, sharecropping, and systematic oppression, which still occurs today, even through the guise of equality. Because when we look at DEI and affirmative action, can anyone point out, because I just keep hearing people, non-Black, immigrants, black immigrants, state that, oh, you guys got DEI and affirmative action. Please show the evidence how DEI and affirmative action, all these initiatives that was passed, how it supported and uplifted Black Americans. Show us the evidence. Don't just give me side speech and word salad. Show us the evidence. But still, Juneteenth became a symbol of Black resilience, Black survival, and the fight for full citizenship. Because after 1865, newly freed Black folks began celebrating Juneteenth with church gatherings and barbecues and music and prayer services and family reunions. Even in my neighborhood, they're having a Juneteenth celebration. It became a sacred tradition, one that carried the whispers of our ancestors and the hope of future generations. They called it Jubilee Day. You guys are familiar with that. You probably heard Jubilee Day before, because even during segregation, even when Black history was erased from textbooks, Juneteenth lived in our homes, our churches, and our souls, mostly in the South. Believe it or not, I'm a native of Washington, D.C. Juneteenth was not popular in D.C. or Maryland or Virginia or New York. It was mostly popular in the southern states. And now, after centuries of struggle through the civil rights movement, the rise of Black power, and the call for justice, even after George Floyd's murder, Juneteenth has finally become a federal holiday as of 2021. Let's be clear that our celebration of Juneteenth is not a gift from the government. It's a birthright. We made Juneteenth sacred, not the state. They just authorized for people to be off on that day, did they not? So if you would have ever asked your question, why do we celebrate Juneteenth? Why do we celebrate it? Well, because it acknowledges the unfinished business of freedom. It also honors those who suffer without justice, who die without recognition. It is a moment to reclaim our narrative, to teach our children the truth, and to resist the whitewashing of our history. It also allows us to pause, reflect, and recharge, because the fight for true liberation is far from being over. So to ignore Juneteenth is to forget the price that our ancestors paid in their blood, sweat, and tears. To dismiss it is to turn our backs on our own story. Juneteenth is not just about what happened in 1865. It's about every generation of Black Americans who have kept the flame of liberation burning, from Frederick Douglass to Fannie Lou Hamer, from the Black Panther Party to Marcus Garvey, to the Black Lives Matter movement, not the organization, to Malcolm X, from the cotton fields to corporate bedrooms. It's a day of truth telling, of healing, of protest, of pride. So this Juneteenth, celebrate it. Raise the Juneteenth flag, not the RBG flag. Hold your heads high. Because the story of Juneteenth is a story of us, unbroken, undefeated, and forever rising. I know they hate that. I know they hate that. We have to reclaim our narrative. And when we're talking about the whitewashing of our history, you see the eradication of Black history in Texas schools, in other quote unquote red states. And again, I'm not a Republican, conservative, liberal, Democrat, independent, Green Party, White Party, Red Party, a horse, an elephant, a cow. I'm any of those things. I just want to give you guys the truth as I see it. And happy Juneteenth. This is Blacklogic.